Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernest Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Not even one day removed after the Louisville Cardinals fired their head coach, Kenny Payne, another head coach just got the boot. This time it is Oklahoma State Cowboys head basketball coach Mike Boynton. And this is the time of year in college basketball as the conference tournaments are going on and the teams toward the bottom of these respective conferences start losing in their conference tournaments. Coaches drop like flies left and right after having poor seasons or multiple poor seasons. And unfortunately for Mike Boynton, he is the next head coach on the list of coaches on the hot seat that finally ended up getting the pink slip. He had an up and down stint as the Oklahoma State head coach, and he was a young guy. He's only like 42 years old right now, so he probably could end up getting a head coaching job again in the future. But Oklahoma State was his first coaching job. He was a basketball player at the University of South Carolina, and then he was an assistant coach for South Carolina, Stephen F. Austin, and then Oklahoma State. And then he got the head coaching job back in 2017. And if you look at his overall record, he was only 119 and 109, and he was 51 and 75 in the Big 12. Now, granted, the Big 12 is one of the toughest conferences in college basketball lately, especially the last few seasons. It's absolutely unreal how competitive the conference is. So it's a little bit understandable why his conference record was so poor, but still, that's not good when you're only winning 40% of your conference games, and he was barely over 500. And Oklahoma State is a very proud program. They won 2 national titles back in the 1940s, and they've been to tons of Elite Eights, even though most of those Elite Eights were back in the 1940s and 1950s. And since 2000, they've been to the NCAA tournament fairly consistently, but recently, ever since the 2017 season, they've only made the NCAA tournament twice, so that's not a good look for Oklahoma State. And when you look at Mike Boynton's stint at Oklahoma State, he only made the NCAA tournament one time, and that was with Cade Cunningham. And Cade Cunningham only went to Oklahoma State because his brother was on staff. And I'm not saying that means Mike Boynton couldn't recruit or that he is a terrible head coach, but that's why firing Mike Boynton makes sense after his 7th season with the Cowboys, because if he only made the NCAA tournament one time with Cade Cunningham, he wasn't going to make the NCAA tournament anymore. He only made 2 NITs, one in his first season in 2017-2018 and one last year back in 2022-2023. And the other seasons, they just weren't all that competitive. Oklahoma State was at the bottom of the conference this season, along with West Virginia. And we know why West Virginia was bad, because Bob Huggins ended up getting fired, and then they had an interim coach all season. But with Oklahoma State being in the 7th season of Mike Boynton, there's no reason why they should be the second to worst team in the conference, and they shouldn't be finishing with only 12 wins on the season. To be fair to Mike Boynton this year, Bryce Thompson, the transfer from Kansas, their best player, he was injured this season. He did not play at all, but Oklahoma State still had some talent on the roster, but they were not winning games, and Mike Boynton probably wasn't going to be able to turn this thing around in the future, especially with how competitive the Big 12 is. Yes, Oklahoma and Texas are leaving for the SEC, but those two teams, it's not like they're the juggernauts of the Big 12 in basketball. They might be in football, but in basketball, you still got Kansas and Baylor, and now Houston joining the fold this past season and lighting it up, and they won the conference. Oklahoma State probably just wasn't going to be all that competitive in the future with Mike Boynton. Hopefully in the future, Mike Boynton will have success as a coach, even if it's just as an assistant. I did ask on Twitter, do you think Oklahoma State made the right decision to fire Mike Boynton? And almost 70% of people do agree that it was time to move on and for the Cowboys to end up hiring a new head coach. Now let's look at some of the targets for the Cowboys' next head coach real quick. There are a lot of names right now for all of the coaching jobs that are open, like Ohio State and Louisville, and Dusty May, he is on all of those lists. I don't think Dusty May is going to be going to Oklahoma State. Nothing against the Cowboys, but Louisville and Ohio State's a better job. Paul Mills at Wichita State, he was at Oral Roberts. That wouldn't be a bad hire. He's from the area, and this is one that I actually could see happening. It makes sense. Almost would be a perfect fit. Yes, Wichita State has struggled this year, but Paul Mills is taking over a tough situation because the Shockers have not been good after they fired longtime head coach Greg Marshall a few seasons ago, and they have not been having success lately. So if you're going off more of what Paul Mills did at Oral Roberts, that would not be a bad hire for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Burrell at UNC Asheville, that wouldn't be a bad hire either. Not as good of a fit geographically as Paul Mills would be, but I could see it happening. Bryce Drew, the Grand Canyon coach, that's not a bad option either. Yes, he's more out west than Oklahoma State is, but he has had a lot of success at Grand Canyon. People people are always talking about how loud the home environment is for Grand Canyon. Maybe Bryce Drew could bring some of that juice to Oklahoma State. Danny Sprinkle at Utah State, he could take the Washington job, so that might make Oklahoma State off the table, but that's not a bad option either. Bucky McMillan at Samford, Darian DeVries at Drake, and then you got the UT Arlington head coach and the Little Rock head coach on the list. Richard Pitino at New Mexico, Rick Pitino's son, that's a possibility as well, but I do think a guy like Paul Mills would be higher on the list for Oklahoma State than Richard Pitino. And then some guys that are not going to happen. Bill Self, why is he even on the list? It's a joke. Obviously, Bill Self's not going to take the job. Then a guy from Fox Sports Radio, that would be kind of out of left field. Then the Denver Nuggets player development coach, then an Auburn assistant coach. I would not go those routes. Yes, Mike Boynton was an assistant coach before he became the head coach at Oklahoma State. And I know other coaches have had success making the jump like that, but I would not go that route if I was Oklahoma State. Bruce Weber, who's retired, that's funny because of the fact that Bruce Weber left Kansas State because he was sick of facing the Kansas Jayhawks. He was sick of losing and having an uphill battle at a program with less NIL than some of the juggernaut programs in the Big 12. It's a possibility, but I really don't see it happening. The Houston Rockets assistant coach, the Kansas assistant coach, maybe that's a possibility, but still I wouldn't go that route if I was Oklahoma State. Then Scott Sutton, the Oklahoma State assistant coach, hiring from within can work, but a lot of times it doesn't work either. Will Wade at McNeese State, that's another option. Will Wade, I know he had some allegations at LSU, which is why he got fired, but he is a very successful head coach. He's done very well at McNeese State and at LSU, and I do think that Will Wade would be a guy that could bring success to Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State had some allegations as well, and that prevented them from making the NCAA tournament one of the seasons that Mike Boynton was head coach, even though they weren't even an NCAA tournament caliber team the season that they were not allowed to make the tournament. But those are the coaching candidates for Oklahoma State. A lot of them I'm not really a fan of. I think Paul Mills will be a good fit, but we'll have to see if Oklahoma State ends up going a different route than Paul Mills. But Mike Boynton, it was time to move on. I do not like when any coach has to get fired, and he is a young coach. He's a young mind, and he did have some success at Oklahoma State. But overall, most of his success was that one season with Cade Cunningham, and he only got him because, again, Cade Cunningham's brother was on staff, so he wasn't going to bring in another player of that caliber at Oklahoma State. It's tough for Oklahoma State to bring in that type of talent anyway, but they are a program that has a decent fan base. They have had success in the past, so it is a job that I think would attract a few decent eyeballs for the job. But with all the other jobs like Louisville and Ohio State and West Virginia open as well, it will be tough for Oklahoma State to land a high-profile coach. So that's why maybe they could go the Paul Mills route. But Oklahoma State, you do not want to sit in mediocrity, especially in a tough basketball conference. And firing Mike Boynton was the right move because he probably wasn't going to have anywhere near close to the success that he had with the Cade Cunningham season ever again. But they have to make sure that their next hire is a good one, or Oklahoma State runs the risk of continuing to be a mediocre program in college basketball for many more seasons. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about Oklahoma State firing head coach Mike Boynton, and whether you believe that the Cowboys are going to end up hiring Paul Mills, the Wichita State head coach, or whether you think that they will go a different route and hire a different head coach. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.